The red dust of Colony World Beta 7 swirled around Dr. Marcus Reed's boots as he studied the strange readings on his scanner. His team had been searching these hills for 3 months, looking for signs of the early colony ships that had crashed here 2 centuries ago. Instead, they had found something else entirely. Dr. Reed, Tom, one of his younger assistants, came running over the ridge. "We found it. The entrance you predicted. It's exactly where you said it would be." Reed smiled and packed away his equipment. After 20 years of archaeological work, he had learned to trust the old Earth military maps. They were never wrong. The entrance was a massive steel door, half buried in the red soil. Ancient symbols of the old Earth military were still visible, though badly worn by centuries of dust storms. Reed ran his hand over the faded star insignia, feeling the weight of history beneath his fingers. "Begin the opening sequence," he ordered his team. "Remember, we don't know what's inside. Full containment protocols." The cutting teams worked for hours, their plasma torches slowly working through the thick metal. The door had been designed to last centuries, and it had done its job well. As the last seal broke, a rush of stale air escaped with a long hiss. Reed was the first to step inside, his lights cutting through darkness that hadn't been disturbed for hundreds of years. The bunker was massive, much larger than any they had found before. And there, in the center of the main chamber, sat something that made his heart stop. "Is that what I think it is?" Tom whispered, his light beam playing across the massive shape. Reed nodded slowly. "An M1A3 Abrams tank, main battle tank of the old Earth armies." But he paused, frowning at his readings. Something's not right. These energy signatures, they're not normal for such an old machine. The tank sat silent and proud, its dark green armor untouched by time. No dust had settled on its surface. Some kind of preservation field, Reed guessed. Its main gun pointed slightly upward, as if ready to fire even after all these centuries. When the colony's military liaison, Captain Wilson, arrived an hour later, his reaction wasn't what Reed had hoped for. "It's impressive, Doctor, but it's just an antique," Wilson said, walking around the tank. "Our modern hover tanks would run circles around this thing. We'll help you move it to the museum." Reed wanted to argue, but something caught his eye. There, on the tank side, was a marking he had never seen before in any historical record. A strange symbol, almost like a DNA helix wrapped around a sword. "Captain, look at this," Reed called out. "This isn't standard military marking. And these components." He pointed to several spots on the tank's armor. "They're not in any technical manual I've ever studied." Wilson shrugged. "Probably a custom job by its crew. You know how soldiers like to modify their equipment." But Reed wasn't convinced. The more he studied the tank, the more he found that didn't make sense. The armor wasn't standard steel. His scanners couldn't even identify the material. And there were power readings coming from deep inside, despite the machine being centuries old. That's when the colony's emergency sirens began to wail. Captain Wilson. A young soldier burst into the bunker, out of breath. "Sir, we have multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace. Dozens of ships, maybe more. They're not responding to hails." Wilson's face went pale. "How long until they reach orbit?" 2 hours, sir, maybe less." Reed looked back at the tank, and for a moment, just a moment, he could have sworn he saw lights flicker across its surface, like something sleeping was finally starting to wake up. "Captain," Reed said slowly, "I don't think we found this tank by accident, and I don't think it's just an antique." The tank sat silently in the darkness, its secrets still locked away. But soon, very soon, everyone would learn exactly what this relic of humanity's past could do. The colony's defense platforms fired their first shots exactly 1 hour and 47 minutes after the alert began. They didn't even scratch the alien ships. Dr. Reed watched from the bunker's entrance as bright flashes lit up the night sky. The colony's best weapons, their pride and joy, might as well have been throwing rocks at the incoming fleet. Behind him, in the darkness, sat the tank. "We're calling them the Velar," Captain Wilson said, joining him at the entrance. His uniform was covered in dust, and his eyes showed no sleep. They've hit 3 other colonies in the past month. No survivors. A massive explosion lit up the horizon. Another defense platform gone. "How long?" Reed asked. "Ground forces will be here in less than an hour." Wilson looked back at the tank. "I don't suppose your antique wants to help." As if answering him, a low hum filled the bunker. Both men turned to see soft blue lights running along the tank's armor. They hadn't been there before. "Get me Engineer Torres," Wilson barked into his radio. "Now." Jack Torres arrived 10 minutes later, carrying a bag full of scanning equipment. He was the colony's best military engineer, though right now he looked more like a mechanic who'd been dragged out of bed, which he had been. "Holy mother of," Torres whispered when he saw the tank. The blue lights had grown stronger, and now strange symbols were scrolling across panels that hadn't been visible before. "That's not standard equipment." Reed and Torres worked quickly, connecting their devices to ports that seemed to appear just when they needed them. It was almost like the tank was helping them. "This isn't possible," Torres said, staring at his readings. "This thing has an AI core. Advanced, maybe more advanced than anything we have now. And it's waking up." The tank's engine roared to life, making them all jump back. But it wasn't the sound of an old diesel engine. It was something else, something that made the air itself vibrate. A hologram appeared above the tank's turret. It showed an old military officer in a uniform none of them recognized. "If you are seeing this message, humanity faces extinction," the hologram said. "Project Guardian was our last resort. The tank you have found is not just a weapon. It is a protector, a guardian of our species, and carries within it technology we could not allow to fall into the wrong hands." The message continued as the tank's systems fully activated. "The AI unit designated Atlas has been programmed with every military strategy humanity has ever developed. Its armor and weapons are beyond anything we publicly revealed. This was our insurance policy, hidden away until it was truly needed." Torres let out a low whistle as new readings came in. Captain, this thing isn't just armored. It's got some kind of adaptive metal. And the power readings, they're off the charts." The whole tank shimmered, like heat waves rising from hot ground. Its armor changed, becoming smoother, more angular. The main gun shifted, parts moving in ways that should have been impossible for a mechanical weapon. "I am Atlas," a new voice said, coming from the tank itself. It was deep but not threatening, powerful but calm. "My systems are now at 97% operational capacity. I detect multiple hostile forces approaching the colony. Their weapons are primitive compared to those I was designed to fight." The ground shook as the first alien dropships entered the atmosphere. They could hear explosions getting closer. "Dr. Reed, Engineer Torres," Atlas continued, "I will need a crew. Captain Wilson, I suggest you evacuate all civilians to the bunker systems beneath this facility. They were designed to hold the entire colony population." "There are no bunker systems," Wilson started to say, but then new doors opened in the walls, revealing massive underground shelters. "I have protected humanity before," Atlas said as its engine noise rose to a crescendo. "I will do so again." The tank began to move forward, its tracks leaving strange glowing marks on the ground. Reed and Torres looked at each other, then climbed aboard. They had no idea what the tank could do, but they were about to find out. Behind them, the first alien war machines appeared on the horizon. They were about to learn why ancient Earth was feared across the galaxy. The Velar war machines looked like giant metal spiders. They moved on 6 legs, each one as tall as a house, with energy weapons mounted on their sides. 5 of them were now closing in on the colony's outer buildings. Inside the ancient tank, Dr. Reed and Engineer Torres sat in seats that had formed around them perfectly. The inside of the tank was nothing like the history books showed. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing them everything happening outside. Multiple hostile units approaching, Atlas said calmly. Their armor appears to be a titanium-based alloy. Primitive. Their weapons are plasma-based, also primitive. Torres watched in amazement as data scrolled across his display. These readings, the tank's armor is changing its structure. It's actually learning from scanning their weapons. Correct, Engineer Torres. Atlas replied. My adaptive defense systems analyze all incoming attacks and adjust accordingly. Shall we demonstrate? The tank moved forward with surprising speed. Its tracks made almost no noise, which should have been impossible for something so heavy. The first Velar walker turned toward them and fired its main gun. The bright green plasma bolt hit the tank directly. But instead of melting through the armor, it simply spread out across a strange blue field that appeared for just a second. Energy shield. Torres gasped. This thing has energy shields. Among other things, Atlas said, and Reed could have sworn the AI sounded amused. Now, please observe proper human tank tactics. The tank's main gun fired. The sound was nothing like the old videos of tanks firing. It was more like a crack of thunder. A bright blue bolt shot out and hit the first walker dead center. The alien machine didn't explode. It simply fell apart. Its armor split into perfect pieces like someone had taken it apart with surgical precision. What kind of weapon is that? Reed asked, staring at the display. Molecular disruption cannon, Atlas explained while moving the tank smoothly between buildings. It breaks the bonds holding matter together. Much cleaner than explosive rounds, less collateral damage. The remaining walkers were now all firing at them. The tank's shield lit up with each hit, but Atlas didn't seem concerned. The AI was actually analyzing their attack patterns and weapons in detail, sharing the data on their screens. Their targeting systems are inefficient, Atlas noted. They rely too much on brute force. Allow me to demonstrate a more elegant approach. The tank's turret swiveled with impossible speed. 4 shots, fired so quickly they sounded like one continuous boom. 4 walkers fell. Each one split into clean pieces just like the first. Battalion of infantry units approaching from the north, Atlas announced. They appear to be carrying personal energy weapons. Fascinating design, though rather wasteful in terms of power consumption. Reed watched as hundreds of Velar soldiers came around the corner of a warehouse. They were tall, covered in dark armor, and carried long rifles that glowed with the same green energy as their walkers. Shouldn't we fall back? Torres asked. There's too many of them. Engineer Torres, Atlas said, this unit was designed to face armies. A single battalion is hardly worth concern. Activating point defense system. Small ports opened all over the tank's armor. Tiny bolts of blue light shot out, moving so fast they were almost invisible. Every bolt found its target. The entire Velar battalion fell in seconds, their armor coming apart just like their machines. I have analyzed their combat patterns, Atlas said as the last soldier fell. Their tactics suggest they have never faced significant resistance. They rely on overwhelming force rather than skill. This will make things easier. More explosions lit up the sky as more Velar ships entered the atmosphere. But now, watching the ease with which the ancient tank had handled their first attack, Reed felt something he hadn't expected. Hope. Atlas, he said, just what else can this tank do? Dr. Reed, the AI replied, we have barely begun to demonstrate my capabilities. Shall we proceed with a proper counterattack? The tank turned toward the center of the alien invasion force, its armor shimming with power, ready to show the aliens exactly why human weapons were once feared across the stars. The colony's survivors watched from their bunker screens as the ancient tank rolled through the streets. Every time the Velar tried to stop it, they failed. Their weapons couldn't hurt it. Their tactics couldn't slow it down. And with each battle, the tank seemed to get stronger. The tank is learning. Torres explained to Captain Wilson as they watched another group of alien walkers fall. Every time they attack, Atlas adapts the armor to resist them better. It's not just fighting, it's evolving. On the main screen, they could see inside the tank where Reed and Torres have been working with Atlas for the past 6 hours. The AI had turned the tank's interior into a perfect control center, with each system adapted to how they worked best. Enemy dropship approaching, Atlas announced. They appear to be attempting a new tactical approach. Interesting. The Velar ship was larger than the others, and it carried something new. A massive cannon that crackled with red energy. The aliens had brought in their heavy weapons. Energy signature suggests a concentrated plasma beam, Atlas said. Power output is approximately 12 times higher than their previous weapons. This should be educational. The dropship fired. The red beam was so bright, it turned night into day. It hit the tank directly, and split around it like water around a rock. The tank's shield didn't just block the beam, it bent it, sending the energy harmlessly into the sky. As I suspected, Atlas said, they rely too heavily on raw power. Now allow me to demonstrate a more efficient approach to energy weapons. The tank's main gun shifted, parts moving and changing until it looked nothing like a normal cannon. It fired a thin blue beam that cut the dropship in half lengthwise. The two pieces fell quietly to the ground, their edges smooth like polished glass. I have integrated several of their power cells into my systems, Atlas told Reed and Torres. Their energy technology, while crude, is useful for maintaining shield strength. Would you like to see what else we can adapt? Torres checked his readings with excitement. The tank it's rebuilding parts of itself using their technology, but making it better somehow. New weapons emerged from the tank's sides, smaller versions of the alien plasma guns, but sleeker, more efficient. The tank's tracks had changed too, now hovering slightly above the ground, while still looking like normal treads. My primary directive is to protect humanity, Atlas explained as they moved toward the main alien force. To do this effectively, I must be able to upgrade myself using any available technology. The Velar have kindly provided numerous opportunities for improvement. That's when they heard the transmission. It was coming from the largest alien ship still in orbit. Unknown human weapon, a harsh voice said in broken English. You cannot be. The Guardian weapons were destroyed. All records show this. Your records are incomplete, Atlas replied calmly. Would you like a more thorough demonstration of my capabilities? The alien commander's voice shook with what sounded like fear. That signal pattern, you're one of the first Guardian units, the ones that fought in the Great War, the ones that drove back the transmission cut off suddenly. The alien ships in orbit started moving, but not to attack. They were pulling back. Atlas, Reed asked, what was he talking about? What Great War? Dr. Reed, the AI replied. I believe it is time I explained why I was really created, and why the Velar reacted with such fear when they recognized my signal pattern. The tank's display shifted, showing images of an ancient war that humanity had somehow forgotten. A war where tanks like Atlas had faced something far worse than the Velar. But first, Atlas said, we should finish securing the colony. Because if the Velar are here, then the real enemy cannot be far behind. The holographic images filled the tank's interior, showing scenes from a war that no one remembered. Earth ships battling creatures that looked nothing like the Velar. These beings were made of shifting darkness, their ships like tears in space itself. They were called the Void Hunters, Atlas explained as Reeve and Torres watched in silence. They came from the spaces between galaxies, and they nearly destroyed everything. The images showed massive battles, fleets of human ships fighting against the dark vessels. But what caught everyone's attention were the tanks, hundreds of them, just like Atlas, fighting impossible battles and winning. I don't understand, Reed said, watching as one of the tanks in the recording took down what looked like a mountain-sized creature. Why isn't this in any of our history books? Because humanity chose to forget, Atlas replied. The war was won, but the cost was too high. Earth's leaders decided the truth would do more harm than good. They sealed away their most powerful weapons, units like myself, and let time erase the memories. Torres pointed to new readings appearing on his screen. The Velar ships, they're not just retreating. They're running from something. Something big. Atlas brought up a new display showing the edge of the solar system. A massive shape was moving through space, leaving what looked like tears in reality behind it. As I suspected, the AI said, the Velar are not invaders. They are refugees. The Void Hunters have returned, and they are running from them, just as they did 300 years ago. The tank's systems hummed as it processed new data. Parts of its armor shifted and changed, preparing for what was coming. That's why you were sealed in this bunker, Reed realized. This colony, it wasn't random, was it? This was a defensive position. Correct, Dr. Reed. This colony sits at a strategic point between three spiral arms of the galaxy. If the Void Hunters return, they would have to pass through this region. I was placed here to wait, to be ready. Through the displays, they could see the colony's survivors gathering outside their bunker. The Velar ships were landing now, not to attack, but to seek shelter. Their ground forces were setting up defensive positions alongside the colony's military. The Void Hunters cannot be fought with normal weapons, Atlas continued. They exist partially outside our reality. That is why the Guardian units were created. We were built to fight enemies that broke the laws of physics themselves. A massive screen appeared, showing tactical data and battle plans that HFYs had been preparing for centuries. The Velar's weapons and technology will help, the AI said. But they are not enough. To face what is coming, I will need to activate all of my systems. Some of them have not been used since the Great War. The tank's main gun began to change again, growing longer, more complex. Strange energies rippled across its surface. Dr. Reed, Engineer Torres, Atlas said, its voice somehow both calmer and more serious than before. What you have seen so far has been a fraction of my true capabilities. The weapons I used against the Velar were designed for conventional warfare. What comes next? The tank's entire structure shifted, revealing layers of technology that seemed to bend reality itself. What comes next will show you why the Void Hunters feared Earth's weapons, why humanity's war machines were sealed away, and why some enemies require guardians that can break the rules of reality itself. High above, the first tears in space began to appear. The real war was about to begin. The sky broke open like shattered glass. Where stars had been visible moments before, now there was only darkness. Not the darkness of space, but something deeper, something hungry. Multiple Void Hunter entities detected. Atlas announced, its voice steady as the tank's systems surged with power. Their primary dreadnought is larger than any I faced in the Great War. Through the tank's advanced displays, Reed and Torres watched as shapes emerged from the tears in reality. The Void Hunters' ships looked like they were made from frozen shadows, their surfaces rippling like dark water. The colony's defense systems are now under my control, Atlas said. Small panels throughout the tank opened, revealing clusters of glowing crystals, beginning full combat protocols. Torres checked his readings and gasped. These power levels, they're impossible. The tank is generating more energy than a small star. Correct, Engineer Torres. The technologies you have seen until now were my basic functions. The tank's entire structure began to shift and change. This is what I was built for. The tank lifted off the ground, its tracks splitting apart to reveal anti-gravity systems that glowed with blue-white light. Its main gun transformed into something that looked like a piece of a black hole, contained within crystal and light. High above, the Void Hunter's dreadnought fired its first shot. A beam of pure darkness struck the planet, turning everything it touched into nothing. But before it could hit the colony, Atlas acted. The tank fired upward. A beam of pure white light shot from its gun, meeting the dark beam in the sky. Where they met, reality itself seemed to bend and twist. Beginning multi-dimensional combat protocols, Atlas announced. Dr. Reed, Engineer Torres, please brace yourselves. What you are about to experience may be disorienting. The world around them changed. Through the tank's displays, they could now see things that shouldn't exist. Layers of reality stacked on top of each other like pages in a book. The Void Hunters exist in multiple dimensions at once, Atlas explained as it moved through space that seemed to fold in on itself. To fight them, we must do the same. The tank systems spread throughout the colony. Every computer, every machine, came under Atlas's control. Defense turrets transformed, upgraded by the tank's technology. Even the Velkar's weapons changed, enhanced by knowledge from the Great War. They remember us, Atlas said as another dark beam was deflected. They remember what humanity's guardians did to them in the last war. That is why they have returned with a larger force. The Dreadnought launched smaller ships, each one a tear in space shaped like a blade. They screamed toward the colony, ready to cut reality itself apart. Atlas moved like nothing made of metal should be able to move. The tank phased between dimensions, appearing and disappearing, firing weapons that turned the laws of physics into suggestions. Hull breach detected on enemy dreadnought, Atlas reported. Their dimensional shielding is stronger than previous models, but not strong enough. Reed watched in awe as the tank's weapons tore holes in space itself, matching the Void Hunters at their own game. But he also noticed something worrying. The crystals in the tank were starting to crack. Atlas, he said, your power cores. They're destabilizing. Correct, Dr. Reed. This level of combat requires more energy than my systems can safely contain. But that was always part of the plan. What plan? Torres asked, seeing more crystals start to crack. The plan that has waited 300 years to be completed, Atlas replied. The final protocol of every Guardian unit. When all else fails, we become the weapon itself. The tank rose higher, its systems pushing far beyond their limits, ready to show why even the Void Hunters feared the guardians of humanity. The tank rose through the broken sky, its systems glowing brighter than a sun. Inside, Reed and Torres watched as more power crystals cracked, each one releasing energy that should have destroyed the tank instantly. Final protocol initiated, Atlas announced. Crew evacuation required. We're not leaving you, Reed said, but the AI was already moving them. The seats shifted, forming protective bubbles around both men. This is not a request, Dr. Reed. A Guardian's final protocol was designed to be executed alone. What comes next is beyond human survival parameters. The bubbles ejected from the tank, floating safely back to the colony below. As they descended, Reed and Torres could see everything clearly through the bubble's walls. Atlas faced the massive Void Hunter dreadnought alone. The dark ship was larger than a city, its surface writhing with shadows that ate light itself. But the ancient tank showed no fear. To the Void Hunter command, Atlas transmitted on all frequencies. You were warned never to return to this galaxy. The Guardian units of Earth may sleep, but we do not forget. The dreadnought's response came in a language that hurt human ears, but Atlas translated for everyone watching below. One Guardian cannot stop us. Your power cores are failing. Your weapons crack reality, but your hull breaks with it. You are alone. Incorrect, Atlas replied. I am not alone. I carry within me the legacy of Earth, the combined knowledge of humanity's greatest achievement, the power to break dimensional walls themselves. And most importantly, the tank's entire structure began to glow white-hot as its remaining power crystals shattered all at once. I carry the one weapon you truly fear, the reason you ran from Earth 300 years ago. The power of a Guardian's final protocol. The tank's armor split apart, revealing a core of pure light. But it wasn't just light. It was a tear in reality larger than any the Void Hunters had ever made, a portal that led to somewhere even they feared to go. "What are you doing?" the Void Hunter ship demanded, trying to pull away. But Atlas had already locked onto it with unbreakable tractor beams. "Taking you home," Atlas replied simply. "Back to the void you came from. Permanently." The tank's core exploded outward, the portal growing until it was large enough to swallow the dreadnought whole. The dark ship tried to phase between dimensions, but Atlas's final protocol had locked all dimensional doors except one, the path back to the void. "Dr. Reed, Engineer Torres," Atlas transmitted one last time. "It has been an honor to serve with you. Captain Wilson, the colony is now equipped with upgraded defense systems. They will serve you well. And to any Void Hunters who survive, remember this: I am not the last guardian. Earth has many more of us, hidden throughout the stars. We will always rise when needed. We will always protect humanity." The portal flared blindingly bright. When the light faded, both Atlas and the dreadnought were gone. The tears in the sky sealed themselves, the stars returning to their proper places. In the days that followed, the colony discovered that Atlas had done more than just save them. The tank had upgraded their entire defense grid with forgotten Earth technology. The Velkar, grateful for their rescue, signed a permanent peace treaty. And deep in the colony's archives, Reed found one last message from Atlas. "The war is not over. More guardians sleep among the stars, waiting to be found. When humanity faces extinction again, look for us. We will be there." 3 months later, on a distant planet, another archaeological team discovered a sealed bunker door with a familiar marking, a DNA helix wrapped around a sword. The legacy of Earth's guardians was just beginning.